Hi, this is Joe Jusko, and you're listening to the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Taylor, and you are listening to the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast, your weekly digest of hobby goodness, brought to you by the Marvel Cards Fan Collective, an awesome community of card collectors and creators. You can find our two groups on Facebook, details of which are at the end of this podcast, so come check us out. With me, as always, is my co-pilot in all things Marvel cards. He's a masterpiece for the ages. It's Norrin Rad.
Too good to me, brother. I'm giddy. So giddy. I'm trying not to be giddy. I'm so embarrassed. I'm trying to be. I'm very giddy. I'm being very giddy.
I'm going to say now. It takes. I'm going to hold off on the fanboying, and I'm just going to get into the intro.
I'm trying.
I'm actually prepared. Okay.
I'm proud of you, man. You're doing so well, bro.
Thank you. I'm holding it together. So, Norrin, a lot of folk will remember that for the longest time, episode 1 even, we've had a respectful nod towards the horizon whenever his name was mentioned. It's only right that the artist who many consider to be the godfather of Marvel cards, the daddy, if you will, would be given our now customary "Good evening, sir," tip of the hat, whenever his name be uttered on our podcast. Indeed, after so many episodes and near misses to record, it brings me incredible pleasure to say "Good evening, sir," and raise a glass to our guest this week. You might know him. By the way, this is not alcoholic, I should say. I haven't started drinking yet. You may know him from such iconic sets as Marvel Masterpieces 1992, Marvel Masterpieces 2016, or perhaps unluckily arrested by him in Manhattan somewhere around 1980. Mr. Joe Jusko, how the devil are you, sir?
It's a real pleasure, guys. I'm happy to finally be here.
I was working on that intro for way longer than is probably healthy for me. But I knew if I didn't write it down, I'd end up blubbering like some idiot. So appreciate you finally fitting us into your busy schedule.
Oh no, yeah, no. I've meant to for the longest time, and I keep forgetting. Just being distracted by stuff. So I'm glad that we had to do this.
That's cool. Well, listen, I think there's something coming up that you'll probably want to talk about, actually. So it might be good timing in terms of promoting something that you've posted in group about, but we'll get on to that.
And you've always been here in spirit, brother. So
always in spirit. Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
I've had the hardest time keeping a lid on the fact that we're talking to you today. It's been about 2 weeks now, so it's, I've been living with the secret for a while. I did actually reach out to 3 people other than Norrin, one of whom was our guest yesterday. I'll come on to that yesterday. One of whom was an artist who works in sketch cards, who's in the group, and one of them is a collector. And I each asked them to submit a little question. So we'll get onto those later as well. There's so much we can talk about, and we've kind of got a little kind of map of it, but we'll just have a conversation, really. Obviously, I want to talk about Marvel Masterpieces, and obviously, I want to talk about the work that you're doing now for the Edgar Rice Burroughs books. But can we go back in a time machine, Joe?
Absolutely.
It's the first time people are hearing about you. I want to know what happened. Where did you get started? Because I've read about it, and I know it's been written about, but how did you get started, and how did you end up going from the New York Police Department to Marvel Comics?
Okay. Where do I start? Well, I was a comic fan from the time I was a kid. We didn't grow up with a whole lot of money, and the thing that kept me occupied when I was a kid, where my father would give me money to go to the newsstand or the candy store and pick up whatever comics came out, because he liked them all. So my older brother read comics. So I used to buy comics, and it was a way for me to like I said, pass my time, and also I found myself intrigued by the artwork. My older brother drew before I did. He was 9 years older than me, and I used to watch him draw, and I decided that I wanted to try that too. So I would try to do what he did. And I would copy stuff out of the comics all the time. I remember copying like giant chalk drawings on the sidewalk outside our apartment building of like the old Marvel posters that initially came out. That was the Ditko Spider-Man and the Kirby Hulk thing. And then when I was about, I guess, 8 or 9 years old, I was trading comics with a kid in the playground, and I got Avengers 57 and 58, which were the John Buscema Vision issues. And those books just blew me away. You know, it was the first time I really took notice of any particular artist's work, to the point where I decided this is what I want to do with my life. You know, it was that young, and I decided that I want to do that. I wanted to be the next Joe Buscema, which was insanity to even consider years old. But I never stopped that. Well, you know, once that realization hit me, I drew constantly. You know, it got me out of classes in grade school all the time, because I was the guy picked to do the bulletin boards and do special projects, you know, for the school. And then in 8th grade, you had to take a test for whatever high schools you wanted to go to. You know, you applied for them. And art and design, the teachers at my school said, "Why don't you take a test for art and design?" You know, and I took the entrance exam and I got in there. And all through high school, had decided that I wanted to draw comics for a living. That was my goal. Wow. But I realized in senior year, I won the DC Comics Award of Excellence in Cartooning, because DC used to give an award to the boy who would be the best student in every graduating class. I realized that I was never going to be fast enough. I wasn't a natural draftsman, and I wasn't going to be fast enough to draw comics on a monthly basis, you know, and at 17, I was able to realize that, you know, I was very honest with myself about what my abilities would be. So I spent the gift certificate they gave me with the award on different paints. I decided, you know, that I was going to teach myself how to paint, even though I'd never painted before. So really, the naivete of youth, and if I had really thought about how difficult all these life decisions I was making should have been, I might never have done it. But I bought a bunch of different paints, and that summer, the summer I graduated, I simply played with oils, I played with gouache, I played with acrylics, and I couldn't really figure out how to use any of them, but I put together like 3 or 4 sample paintings that summer. And that fall, I met Howard Chaykin in a comic book store in New York City. It was like the comic store that all the pros went to. And I happened to be in there. I knew the owners because I'd worked in a comic store previously, not that one, a different one. And you get to know, you know, there weren't that many stores at that point. So we all knew each other. And Chaykin came in, and the guy who owned the store said, you know, you should see his work. He's really good. And it so happened that Howard was looking for an assistant at the time. His assistant that was leaving, and he needed somebody else to work on stuff. And based on these 3 paintings that I had in my portfolio, he asked me if I wanted to work for him. And I was like, sure. That's you know, it was like $20 a day, you know, to sit there and went up to his apartment on 26th Street and 2nd Avenue at the time. And I was in this little room with him painting backgrounds on a thing called Empire. It was the science fiction graphic novel he was doing, and inking backgrounds and stuff on different stories he was doing. It was bizarre. It was bizarre how it just, you know, people ask me how to get into the industry, how to break in. I'm like, I have no advice for you, because it just kind of happened for me. It was the weirdest thing, you know. It was just a matter of meeting someone at the right time in the right place, and having him think enough of you to give you some kind of a break. And while I was with him, he sent me up to Heavy Metal with those 3 covers that I had done that summer I graduated high school. And they bought one of the covers. They bought one of those paintings for a cover on Heavy Metal. So, and you know, 1977, 78, 77, it was that, like, Heavy Metal was the magazine everyone wanted to be on.
Yeah.
And they bought one of my pieces for a cover, which to this day amazes me. You know, they commissioned another one off me and another job. And I went back to work with Howard, and Howard's predicted, he said, well, you know, now that you're published at Heavy Metal, I could send you up to Marvel. And he predicted I would be with him about 6 months before I broke it on my own. And he was pretty much dead on. So I worked with Howard about 6 months. I went up to Marvel based on his recommendation. They commissioned a cover off me, and I just kept getting work at Marvel, you know. So that's kind of how that started. You know, I was 18 years old. I was painting covers for Marvel's magazine line.
Wow. Okay.
It's crazy. That's so amazing. So amazing.
Well, it's because I actually had no idea what I was doing. If you look at those early covers, I mean, they were like a mixed media approach, because I didn't know how to use any one particular paint. the right way. So I was using anything I could to get the effects I wanted. So they're a combination of watercolors and gouache and acrylics and magic marker and just all kinds of stuff, just because I was basically teaching myself how to paint while I was working on those covers for Marvel, which in hindsight, it really, like I said, is pretty amazing.
But what a way to
it's exploration, right? It's pure creativity and that exploration that kind of builds something really unique and different.
Yeah, and it never occurred to me that I shouldn't be doing that at 18 years old. You know what I mean? It was what I considered to be a natural progression. It's like, this is what I want to do, and I'm doing it. And looking back, I should have been more intimidated, or I should have been more unsure of myself. But I was just, okay, give it to me and I'll do it. And despite the fact that I was really green, and some of those early covers, show it obviously, it just never occurred to me that I shouldn't be doing that. I don't know.
Well, yeah. So you're at this stage using these different paints and stuff. So what kind of clicks, and when does it start happening where you start developing the technique you use now, like the progression of that?
It took a good 15 years. I mean that was when I was 18. Like I said, it was 1977, 78. And I had done covers. I was working for Marvel for a few years, and I was getting work, but there was only so much work at Marvel because, they were more a comic book company than a magazine company. And their magazine line was slowly starting to dry up, and I couldn't get a Savage Sword cover for Roy Thomas to save my life. He had his own staple of guys that he liked to use, and I think he realized that I wasn't quite ready for the covers, or I wasn't quite as accomplished as a painter as the other guys doing those covers. So it wasn't until he had left and Louise Jones took over that I started to get covers with the Conan stuff. But I still wasn't making a great living. I was still living home with my parents. I was 19, 20 years old. I really couldn't afford to move out because there was only so much work at the time. So I decided that the other thing I always had an interest in was police work. And I took the police exam because there was a 15-year hiring freeze. Because the city had no money, but all the cops were retiring. So they opened up the tests again. And I took the test with a bunch of friends of mine. It's funny. It's like I grew up in a really bad neighborhood in New York City, and half the guys I grew up with, I became cops at jail. Yeah, exactly. And I made it. I got on. And my initial idea was that I would do that for 20 years, do some freelance on the side, then retire and go back into freelance full time. Again, a very naive outlook on how I was going to be able to do that. But after a few years of being a cop, I decided that art was what I really wanted to do. So I went up to Tom DeFalco at Marvel and I said, if I leave, can you guarantee me some work? And Tom was great. Tom was like, we'll give you as much work as we can give you. And this was like 1985 now. I jumped ahead a bunch of years. And they were doing posters. They had more magazines, more painted projects and stuff at that point. So I went back into art full time again. But getting back to the initial question, I was still doing that mixed media thing because I wasn't painting consistently in the time that I was a cop. I was doing jobs on the side, covers on the side. It made me realize that this is what I really should be doing, and what my true passion was. But I was still doing that whole mixed media approach, even up to the time that I got to the Marvel Masterpiece cards. Wow. It was still all mixed media. And I'd say that I didn't switch over and decide that I needed to pick one particular medium and become good at it until I did the Burroughs cards in 1995.
Wow.
That's really cool.
That makes sense now.
Wow. Answer that question. But and then once I decided that acrylics is what I should learn to use, I just experimented with them, kept trying and kept polishing my approach with them to the point where, surprisingly, so many people think I work in oils instead of acrylics because I came up with an approach and a technique for those things that really gives them sort of a more finished, natural look than a lot of acrylic paintings have.
Yeah.
Wow.
That makes sense now because I've seen you comment before. See, the joyous thing about Marvel Masterpieces group on Facebook is that you occasionally drop in and engage with collectors,
which is amazing.
Fans. So thank you for that because I know they
seriously
really, really cherish that. But I've seen you come.
Great group, it really is. I mean, you guys have always been so supportive my work. I really enjoy coming on there.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
I appreciate you.
But I've seen you comment before that you were just, because of the time scale of Masterpieces 92, you were kind of just, anything, you were using anything just to get it done. And, that very much ties into the mixed media phase still being, you were kind of sort of the tail end of that, I guess, if it's a few years off you settling down to one thing. So that makes sense.
I use basically anything that dried instantaneously, so there was a lot of marker underlaying going down just to give me a base color. And then there were Dr. Martin's dyes, there are watercolors, there are gouache. And Dr. Martin's dyes, I've learned, were not the smartest choice. A lot of people pick those to use because Neil Adams used to use them on his book covers when he was doing all the magazine covers and the Tarzan covers he did back then. But he learned to use those in advertising. And Dr. Martin's dyes are very fugitive, meaning delicate and not light, fast, medium, because they were used basically for comps in advertising. And Neil decided to use them for his artwork. So if you look at a lot of Neil's paintings today, they're all faded from sun damage.
Gotcha.
So probably not the smartest things to use, especially when you're doing a mixed media approach, because once they sort of faded, the other stuff didn't, so that you get separation of color and value and stuff like that. So that's another reason why I decided I had to pick one medium and stick with it.
We've gotten so lucky with the group because we've had other artists come in and. I collect sketch cards, and a lot of us collect sketch cards and look at the art, and we've been seeing them when we were the kids. So we just analyze and enjoy them. But it's so amazing how much like artists have to also be chemists, because I hear this conversation a lot. Like Bianchi told us about this, and Julie Bell and Boris. Like, it's so fascinating to hear the mediums, the brushes, right? Palumbo also mentioned this. Right. It's pretty fascinating.
Well, you learn through experience also that if you use alcohol-based markers as an underpainting and then you paint over with acrylics, the alcohol eats through the acrylic. So you'll start to marker underneath the acrylic overpainting. And like you said, you have to be a bit of a chemist, and you learn this stuff as you go along. That using marker under acrylics is not a smart thing to do.
It really reminds me of chefs. Because I spent a couple of years washing up in a restaurant as a student. I'm sure most people have got stories like that. But you get a real sense of the fact that it's very similar, a creativity. It's balancing the chemical reactions of what you're working with, because it's all organic stuff at the end of the day, and how that might come out, at least with the acrylic being eaten away. You're not actually killing someone with the food you're serving them. So there is that. There is that. I was going to ask Joe before we get onto Masterpieces 92, because I'm dying to start asking you about that. But I just throughout that period before, so from 85 through to kind of when Masterpieces happened. Was there anyone specific? Obviously, you worked with Howard for a period, but was there anyone at Marvel who was kind of a mentor to you, or who helped you in a way, or influenced you?
No, I mean, I made friends with a bunch of the editors who it was a much more a social game at that point, because you had lived in New York City. I was lucky enough to be born and raised in New York City, but a publishing company, so Marvel was there. DC was there. It's not like it is now, like post-internet, where you can live anywhere you want. And once the image guys moved out to California, they were based out there. Everything was in New York City. So, you made friends with the editors. I was up there, I lived 15 minutes away from the Marvel offices. So, it's a pop up a couple times a week, and you could back then you can just go into the offices and schmooze and go from office to office and sit and chat and stuff like that, So there was no real mentorship going on, but I if I knew if I stopped up there, I'd walk out with some work, and the more work you got, the better you got. That's like anything else. The more you do something, the more adept you get at it. And there's no real mentorship going on, but a lot of friends who made sure I walked out with work whenever I was up there.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
So, and there was something so. Moving around this period, and this is hopefully a question that bridges us, and as we move down the timeline, you have such a look to your work that's so iconic to Kirby Buscema. You know what I mean? Like, there's such an homage, an echo. That conversation is being built off the backs of those guys with your amazing work. When did you start feeling that necessity to not only have your style, which is very iconic in itself, but also have that kind of pairing with I'm assuming heroes that you had from reading comic books and stuff.
Well, yeah. I think that's pretty obvious in my work, and one of the reasons I think that my paintings move a little bit more than other people's do. I grew up wanting to be a comic book artist. Like I said, I went all through high school wanting to draw comics. So I studied guys like, I'm a Silver Age kid. So I studied guys like Buscema and Romita and Kirby and Adams just to see how figures moved, and I kind of incorporated that when I started to paint. I wanted to keep that same sort of excitement and movement to the paintings, and not just people for covers. So I compose them, and I treat the figures. I try to get movement into every figure I do. I mean, obviously you do pinup shots every now and then, but even then you try to do something with them that is more than them just standing there. So I have instinctively, because I grew up on that stuff, transferred what I learned about action and posing and figure work into my paintings, which I think is one of the things I said that kind of keeps them from being a standard like paper.
They're not stagnant. Yeah, they're beautifully moving. Yeah.
If you look at paperback covers, they're fairly posed. I mean, companies used to pay your modeling fees. They would give you a stipend for modeling fees, so you can go hire models and you can pose them in the clothes that you need, and you shoot the photos and you work off the photo. I tend to draw everything out first, and I'll use photos to correct the stuff that I do if I think it needs it. Or there are certain figures. I've been cutting up magazines for 50 years, so I've got files on anything you could possibly name, so I can cobble stuff together to make sure lighting is right or anatomy is right if I need that. But my initial drawing is always done like a comic book drawing, just so I can get the movement and figure and the approach going that I really want.
Well, it's so funny because, and I'll bridge us to 92 now and this is just my reaction to 92. I could be way off base, but your ability to harken back to those artists and bring your design in, and then look at those photos and correct, I'm assuming cloth. And I've seen you do with cats and animals. I mean, it's just sick how you're able to do. I mean, it's just so cool how you're able to capture that kind of that like, when you have like an action for an animation, you have a start and a beginning, you always kind of capture right in the middle or right after the climax or before. Yeah. Right. What I mean? There's always this kind of tension that's still in the figure. When 92mm came out for so many Marvel card collectors, I think people forget that was the first time, not only in card series, but in Marvel, we really saw characters that looked like people. Right. Like that was the first time. I think that was the set that really made me understand. I was like, oh my God, these like exist. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like these are possibilities, because before MCU, people don't realize that, but Boris and Julie kind of made characters that looked like God, they looked like gods walking amongst us type of thing. Was that always a decision? Was that something that kind of came about? Like, was there a decision there?
Yeah, well, the whole height of tension thing that you talked about was something that I remember reading Frazetta books. Frazetta was he was everybody's god when I was in high school, and those Valentine books started to come out. And there were interviews with him everywhere, and he'd always talked about how he tried to capture the height of tension in any figure. Whether it's standing there or it's moving. So that, along with my comic book background, I've always tried to incorporate it into the paintings. I always find it interesting that people say it was the first time that the 92 Marvel Masterpiece set was the first time they ever saw characters painted realistically, because Marvel had been doing that on magazine covers since the 70s, Wow. And a lot of people thought that like because my work is kind of realistic and it's tightly painted, that Boris Vallejo was like my major inspiration. Boris, of course, was to a certain extent, because again, in when I was in high school, Boris he blew up in the late 70s and 80s. But Bob Larkin was really my biggest influence, because Bob, one, didn't paint in oils like as the other guys did. Bob painted in gouache. And I looked at his work and I said, well, you can do that with dry media, with water-based media. So I wanted my work to look like his. And since I was competing with both he and Norm, for magazine covers at Marvel, I studied their work a lot to sort of see what they were doing to make my work compatible with what Marvel wanted, and so Larkin was really my biggest influence in my formative years of painting, and to the point where people bring me his covers at conventions all the time. There are certain covers I get at least 5 times a con. I'm like, that's Bob, because they cropped his name off. There are a couple of Punisher covers, other covers, and my work at one point looked very much like Bob's work, because he's who I was learning from, and trying to emulate when I first started. So that's probably where all that comes from,
That's so cool. Thank you for that. That connects everything for me now. That's really amazing.
If you think of the timeline, when I was doing those covers, Bob, and then Bob, Earl, and I became sort of the trifecta on the Conan magazines. You know what I mean? So it stands to reason that I was looking at those guys to try to figure out how to make my work saleable. To the point where I had spoken to Jim Shooter a couple of years ago. We met at a con, and I said to him, I thanked him for giving me work. I said, because if you look at my early stuff, I didn't know what I was doing. And what he said, I found what he said to be really interesting. He said, well, you obviously were green and your stuff was really rough, but you knew what we wanted on a cover. You knew what we were looking for as far as energy and composition and vibe and approach. So, that's why you kept getting work. There are a lot of guys who were better painters than you, but didn't get it. And I kind of understood, because again, I guess because I grew up a Marvel kid, and I understood dynamics, and I think that was really an important part of me getting work when I was younger, even though I was fairly unaccomplished.
Gotcha. So I want to hit the 90s now, if you will. Before you got the call for Masterpieces 1992. Or probably even just the tap on the shoulder if you were hanging around the offices.
My work, yeah.
Were you aware? Because we interviewed Bob Budiansky last year. And, were you aware that he was that they were bringing out the card sets, because they brought out, they'd taken Marvel Universe 1990 and then obviously 91. Were you kind of keeping tabs on what they were doing from that?
I wasn't keeping tabs on it, but it's like I said, when I went up there, I was at that period where, if you gave me work, I took it. You know what I mean? Which is why you see, Nightmare on Elm Street covers from me. You'll see Nightcat, NFL Super Pro, and, you'll see basically it's like, if you have work, I'll take it. I'll paint anything. I don't care. You have Care Bears painting, I'll paint the Care Bears for you. So I was aware of the cards, although the cards were a whole separate endeavor until they had asked me to paint the backgrounds for Marvel Universe 3, and it's amazing how many people don't realize that if you put those cards together, there's one big sort of universal background to it. So they asked me if I would do that, because this is pre-digital. It would take 10 minutes today to do that thing, but I had to paint these 2 big paintings, and they gave me a template of where the figures would be. And I had to sort of connect every card. So in between each corner of each card, it had to have kind of a sunburst or a planet or something else, to so that when you put them together, you had this big background. So that was my first introduction doing trading cards. And then Topps called me. Topps had called me because they were doing Toxic Crusader cards, and they wanted me to do a 9-set Toxic Crusader. That was 1991, probably right after or right around the same time I did those backdrop paintings. So my first cards aren't the Marvel Masterpiece cards; they're actually Toxic Crusader cards for Topps.
Wow,
okay. So cool.
Kind of, and it's again, it was they sent me the drawings to use as the basis for the paintings, and I did painted versions of those drawings they sent me. And then the Masterpiece stuff came about simply because I was at that point the guy who was doing most of the painted work up at Marvel. I was by that point. I think I don't know if it was or if Bob had gone on to do other stuff, but I was getting a lot of the painted work. And again, if you're in the offices and you're right in front of somebody, you're the first person they think of to ask if you're willing to take on a job. So I couldn't tell you exactly how it came about. I'm sure that Bob had mentioned to me they were doing a card set and asked me if I'd be interested in doing it. And I know that Jim Lee had just done that X-Men set.
Yes.
So I said, well, I guess I could do little tiny paintings. I know that the I was a trading card fan, so I knew that the Mars Attacks paintings were little paintings, the Batman paintings were little paintings, and I know Jim's paintings were like 5x7. They were these little tiny tiny little things. So I said, sure. I said, actually, it sounds great. And it was also when they told me what I'd be getting paid for, it was the most money I'd ever made on one job in my life. And I was like, of course I'll take it. Sure. No, not a problem. So I'm sure that's how it came about. I'm sure they asked me if I'd be willing to do it, if I had the room in my schedule, which of course I did. And that's how the set came about, as far as me taking the set on.
Yeah. But you earned that money though, didn't you? By all accounts.
Well, you know, it sounded really doable because I was going to do small paintings, you know, little figure things, and they gave me 90. That once I agreed to the job, they told me the deadline was something like 94 days or 96 days or something like that. It was just around 3 months or a little over 3 months to do 104 pieces. But of course, once I started them, and I reasoned out in my head, well, you know, if I did a painting a day, you know, for like without taking a day off for like the 3.5 months or whatever it was, then that shouldn't be a problem. But that's after the first couple, it gets to be you realize you have to come up with the ideas, you have to actually paint the pictures, you know, you have to go through it, and then there was approval on sketches, which I'll get to as to how that didn't quite work out the way it was supposed to. You know, so, and you get sick, you have family obligations. Sometimes so that set schedule wise, I couldn't do it today. It almost killed me because I was working around the clock for the entire time I was working on that set. People were bringing me food in my studio. I would work for 40 hours until I couldn't see anymore. Then I'd go sleep for a few hours and I would get up and I'd work hours until I couldn't see. So there was no set schedule. It was just work until I dropped, get up and work again on those, you know, and I did that for 3.5 months. And toward the end, I remember I brought a batch of cards into the office one day just to get out of the house. People were like, what's wrong with you? I was black under my eyes. I was exhausted. I was like, you know, so yeah, it was a grueling schedule that I don't think I'd ever be able to do again today. But yeah, I got it done.
You did. I remember you, the one of the things, this is going to sound really creepy, so forgive me, but whenever you post in Marvel Masterpieces Collectors, I always save the posts because it's good to look back on, and some of the tidbits of backstory that you've given us that are great, and B, because I knew it would be handy for whenever we ended up being able to speak to you. And you mentioned about the sketches, and you did post once that you only did 25. I'm reading what you typed here. You only did sketches for the first 25 of the 92 masterpieces as the schedule became incredibly tight, and I just went straight to paint with no editorial input on the last 74 base cards. And then you posted a picture of the Xerox you found of Black Cat. So of course I'm sitting there fanning myself like some old Southern belle on the New Orleans seafront. But so that's what you were alluding to with the schedule. You know, this old sketches and
well, yeah. I mean, I did. When my first thought was to do them in 25 card blocks and just have them approved, and I would do those, and I'd do the next 25. So I did the first 25, and I penciled up fairly tight sketches for them. I did like loose breakdowns first, and then I did a tighter pencil of them to bring up to Marvel for approval. And I started to realize, though, with the time schedule that I had, if they started asking for little minute changes and corrections on the sketches, and I was like, you know, I have 3 months to paint 100 paintings. You know, add more mole men. Can you move this guy's hand? And I was just kind of like, you know, I did those. I sent them in, but then I just started to do paintings. I did loose characters. I did really loose sketches, which I'll tell you more about those in a little while. I did really loose break for each card for myself. They weren't really finished sketches, but they were like loose breakdowns. And some of them changed, obviously, from my initial ideas. You know, you know, because you're just jotting out stuff this for yourself, like really loose circular, like block-ins. But I never submitted any more sketches after that. I submitted the first 25, and I said, if I keep submitting sketches and they keep asking for changes, I'm never going to get these done.
Yeah.
So I just did paintings after that. I did a loose breakdown for myself. I did a slightly tighter pencil on tracing paper so I could transfer it down to the board. And then I did the paintings from there and it was just sending paintings in 10 card blocks, I think, at that point. But I had to submit sketches for the entire card set and wait for approvals and changes and stuff like that. That set would never, ever have gotten done. It barely got done as it was.
Yeah. I mean, it came out in October 92, I believe.
Right.
What kind of time frame was it between you kind of finishing that chunk of work and it coming out? Do you remember?
I started the job in March, I believe. So March, April. When did I start the job? I finished it right before San Diego that year because they wanted to do San Diego. So San Diego, I think, was July. So it was July, June, going backwards. I probably started them in April, beginning of April.
Gotcha.
At the end of June, April or May. When did I start them? I know I finished them in like 90 days. So 92 days. So I probably started at the beginning of April. So I had April, May, and June to finish.
Gotcha. And
they were done like right before San Diego in July. I finished the last one.
Wow. So was San Diego
out in October?
Was San Diego meant to be promoting that it was coming? Was that the idea, or was it a different thing?
Yeah, we had a whole big panel there, and I was signing the promo cards in San Diego.
Yes. That's right.
There's a photo of me at the Skybox booth. Actually, there's several photos of me and Ken Baroff and Bob Bubiansky.
That's right.
That's where that photo was from. Okay, yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah, because we saw that photo and then we tracked down Ken first.
Yeah.
We were like, let's get Ken down the line.
And he was lovely.
I finished those and they went into production, and then we got the promo cards done, and they did the promo cards for San Diego. And actually in San Diego, I had to do a quick correction on the Wonder Man card.
Yes.
Bob asked me if I would do a correction because Wonder Man was an actor, and I had him with the Oscar on his bicep. And at the last minute, they were sort of antsy about having the Oscar in it because the Oscar's copyrighted and they're fairly litigious as far as protecting their trademark. So I had to paint in my hotel room. I painted a little Wonder Man statue that they superimposed on the trading card for the final card. But ironically, when they did those comics later on, they used the original painting with the Oscar. And you look at the book, it's the actual painting with the Oscar, and nobody ever caught it.
I hadn't spotted that. At all. I'm going to be digging in. Wow. I've got it here. I'm not going to dig into it right now. When I was looking through some issues of Marvel Age magazine, as you do, I found Marvel Age magazine issue 117 and 118, and 118 is the one that came with the Hulk promo.
Okay,
the little poly bag. There's a 2-part article about Marvel Masterpieces, and there's images of Uncle Bob, looking at the stuff. I
forgot all about these.
Yeah. And then there's photos of yourself. And it does make me laugh. I often wonder if these were candid ones or if you actually posed and you're whispering stuff to each other while you're doing it. There's photos of yourself and Bob.
No, yeah, that's us going to, they're not posed. We were actually going over some stuff.
Oh,
and there was
good.
Elliot was the photographer, and he was in there just snapping pictures as we talked about stuff.
Yeah. These are cool. What I'm going to do is...
what numbers? I'd love to scan that stuff for the book.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to scan them in for this episode. So I'll scan them in high res at the office. We can go up to 600 DPI, and I'll Dropbox them over to Google Drive them over to you. But I'll put them on the tasting notes as well for our listeners because it's a fantastic little article, and it does have some of your concept sketches in there. One for Namor, one for I think that's She-Hulk. Mr. Fantastic. Great. I love it. Good. It's like a little time capsule. And then, of course, part 2, the following issue, which is the one that had your one of the promo cards. And there she is.
Yeah. Staying with the sketches, with the pencils that I did the pencils after I did those really loose initial sketches. I did slightly tighter ones on tracing paper. And what I would do then is I would use the tracing paper as a transfer sheet to transfer the drawing onto the board that I was painting.
Wow.
I had a bunch of those. I had kept a bunch of those over the years, and I think I sold them in like one fell swoop to some guy at a con one time because I had a so I mean, somebody has them. You know, they have the graphite on the back of them and stuff like that, you know, from where I transferred them down. So those things exist. I don't know who has them or who I sold them to, but I know it was a good 20, 25 years ago that I sold them.
It's one of the interesting things when we spoke to Dave Palumbo recently, he did a similar thing because he actually very kindly sent to me the tracing paper outline he'd done for Black Cat before he does it on the what type of board was it that he uses for the prelims, Norrin?
Starts with an M. Masonite.
Masonite. That's it.
Masonite.
Because what Upper Deck did with that is that you could actually get the preliminary paintings that he'd done as incentives. So in the and they did a similar thing for Simone's work in 2018. You get a redemption card, and you get one of the.
I have to do color prelims for this stuff because I just, you know, I was just winging my, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm lucky enough to have, because you were kind enough to reach out to me, which again, thank you so much, by the way. I have the surfer one you did where you planned it. I guess it was for the graphic novel, and it was kind of reminiscent to Silver Surfer 1 Buscema, and that was the pose. Yeah. And it's so cool to see that. And I remember we talked a little bit because you were like, oh, I want to do something nice for the group. And you were talking about putting the preliminary, the tracing paper, the transfer stuff for 2016. Mm-hmm. And I remember when you put that stuff out there, people love that, man. People were so happy to get those pieces. It's so cool that you did that.
If I had known, I would have hung on to all of them. So many of them got trashed because once they were done, they had graphite all over the back of them. And, you know, I just fucked them because the painting was what I really needed, you know, and I never occurred to me that people would want the transfer sheets, but I cleaned them up as much as possible. I took up the graphite, you know, from the back and stuff like that, so that they weren't that much of a mess. But yeah, I was surprised that I chucked out so many of them.
That's so cool.
They're lovely. They're lovely pieces for us mere mortals who can't afford the original art. Not that it's not worth it, but it's.
I like all the production stuff.
And it feels like you've got part of the DNA of the set.
It's awesome.
I love seeing painters' preliminary studies and stuff like that, because especially for me, because I like seeing the thought process. So I agree with you. You can see the finished painting, but to see how they got to that place, I always find fascinating.
We love that stuff. I mean, I'm very fortunate to have a couple surfer pieces from different artists where it was the thought process, and that to me is everything to me. Like, of course, you love the final pieces, obviously, but like, you don't get to see that stuff printed. So when your book came out for the 16 set specifically, it was so wonderful to see that, because, you know, it is exciting to see you go through that process, you know, and I love seeing the thoughts of the poses, because I love that book. Love Ian showing the 2016 book. It's so good. Well, you know, you were talking about when you were doing the 92 pieces, and obviously I'm sure everyone tells you this, but thank you for spending the time for actually getting the characters' personalities in there. You know what I mean? Like, that was people very, you know, it seems like a really small thing, but it's not often done where you have someone who, like, someone knows how to make that Gambit picture read Gambit. You know what I mean? Like, there's just like that Black Cat reads Black Cat. That's
my biggest consideration, because it's really easy to do generic poses, you know, and just stick whatever character into whatever generic pose. But if it doesn't really emote the character, then I don't think it's a successful, you know. So yeah, in addition to trying to do decent cards, I really wanted to try as much as possible to capture what made each character that character. Yeah, you know, and I'm glad people appreciated that, because you're right, it is a small thing, but I think it's a really important thing that helps make the card that much more engaging.
Yeah. It's the truth. It's the truth of the character in it. I think that's why it appeals so much to people who are, you know, whether you collect the set, and obviously 92 is a very easy set to collect as well. You know, you can get the whole set, unlike some of the modern ones.
Because at the time that I had to do that set, that I lifted a bunch of poses from different places. You know what I mean? But if I did, I kind of morphed it into something that I needed for the character I was doing. You know what I mean? Because there was just no way that I was going to be able to sit there. So yeah, I mean, if you go through, I'm not going to tell you which ones to look for. You can see there are certain pieces that were lifted from somewhere else just to get that card set done.
Save that for the book. Save that for the book.
Yeah.
A little tidbit. I think you've probably got quite a lot of trivia in there that you'll publish the book, and then it'll be like 3 months later you'll be like, mother,
always
I've got to type that in. Always the way. Talk about very quickly, just for my own personal curiosity, because one of the things that I loved when I started the Masterpieces group was I went on a tear finding these images of the flyers for the promo tour that you went on.
Yeah.
So obviously you've had a chance to catch up on life and sleep and probably do some laundry and get back to a regular sleeping pattern and things like that. And then all of a sudden you're off on this whirlwind. Was it like a week you went?
It was like I think it was 5 states and something like 7 days or so. It was 7.
God.
And signing. And I guess that's, aside from San Diego Comic-Con, I guess that's probably your first kind of insight as to how the set is being received. What kind of...
Yeah. It was the first. Yeah, I mean, the San Diego were just a promo card, so people didn't know what to expect. You know, I mean, I know one of our biggest fears when that set came out is like Death of Superman was the same year and right around the same time, and we were really worried that the Death of Superman would overshadow the Marvel Masterpiece cards because Death of Superman was such a big thing.
Yeah,
So yeah, that really was my first inclination as to how big that set was. I think I had done a signing at a Staten Island, Jim Hanley's Universe on Staten Island before that, or maybe it was I really don't remember. But yeah, that I was not ready for what that set had become that quick.
Was it quite overwhelming the response? Because
there were a bunch of photos. Yeah, there. We keep alluding to a book that we'll get to in a little while.
We'll get to. Don't you worry.
It was from the different signings. They have photographers taking pictures, and the crowds were absolutely insane. I was shocked. I was really shocked at every single location how busy the stores were and how many people came out to get those cards signed. Like I don't think any of us really knew what that set would become. Obviously, it was just a really cool project, and it was the next progression in Marvel's card sets. They went from doing the pickup art that they would use on the Marvel Universe cards. Then they did the dedicated Jim Lee set. So the next set was obviously let's do a painted set, a dedicated painted set, and it was a card set, and it became, lack of a better word, a phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean the set is in such a way. It's weird because like 1990 Marvel Universe, you get artists like Tom Morgan, you got Jim Lee, you got everyone in the bullpen kind of hanging around doing the actual books that are doing characters from the books they're working on. So there's this beautiful symmetry there. And then Jim Lee gets his own set, and then you do this painted set. And in a strange way, between those 3 sets, right in that grace period, the DNA for Marvel cards kind of starts, and I'm sure it was Bob or whoever was creatively looking at the graphics of, designing the cards, but they did such a smart thing where they put that gold border around the card and then the gold nameplate, and it has the blue and the black, like layered kind of thing. And it just feels elegant. The back is marbled. You have the issue. You have a great write-up on the characters. I don't think people realize, and I hope, Upper Deck and it's such an important thing, but the stuff that's written on the back of the cards was like vital. Yeah. Vital to see that.
But the character's first appearance on the back of the cards also, which it gave us some context and some history, which really, really all worked toward making that set something really, really special and historical as far as Marvel Comics history goes.
100%. And it kind of built that DNA. And I mean, we joke around and we talk about you all the time on the show, but you really are the grandfather, the kind of head figure of this. It's a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah, and like I said, in hindsight, it's amazing because I none of us thought of it that way at the time. It was just like the next natural progression for the card set, and how it changed the industry as far as painted trading cards went. It's really something to look back on. It's amazing.
Yeah. Did you? I think you mentioned in another post, you got asked to then do the follow-up, right, the next year, 93?
Yeah, after that set came out, and then we realized what a big success it was, I was up in the offices, and they had asked me if I would be interested in doing the follow-up set. Obviously, why wouldn't you ask me? I did that set. That set was so successful, and I was interested. But I said, so am I going to have more time for this one, or is the schedule about the same? Because I don't think I could do that again. I mean, the schedule was so tight that I was constantly hearing how they might have to farm out the last 10 cards, to get somebody else to do it. And I was like, no, you're not. I'm not going to paint 90 cards and have you give the last 10 to somebody else.
Which is why they didn't put your name on the advert.
Yeah, well, and I never noticed that till somebody else pointed it out, and I asked about that, and they said, "Well, we weren't sure that you would get the card set done."
Yeah,
but that was the one thing that I think Ken got wrong, was that I was the one who said I may not get this card set done. They told me they were worried about me not getting the card set done.
Oh, really?
And I was like, I will kill you if you bring somebody else in on this card set after I did 90 cards. It's my card set, so I just doubled down and I got the set in on time. But yeah, so they asked me if I would do the 93 set, and I was definitely interested in doing it, but the schedule was basically the same, and I was, I can't do it. I want to do it. I just don't see how I'm going to be able to put myself through that again, because really I still have PTSD from that schedule. Think about doing it again. I just didn't think I'd be able to do it. So that's how that whole multi-artist thing came about. And in order to get me involved in that set, what they did was they took the paintings that I had done for the books when the books came out, the Marvel Masterpiece series, collector's editions, that 4 series, in order for a sales incentive, so that people weren't buying the same images again. They asked me if I would do 5 new pieces for each one of those books. So I did, and they gave me a list of characters, and I did 5 pieces for each one of the books. 5 of which would then later used as lost cards in the tin set.
The Lost Ladies, yeah.
Cards. They were never done for the 92 set. They were done for the books. So any card that was done for the 92 set was in the 92 set. There were no excised cards. So that was a whole sales pitch thing with the tin set, the lost cards. Wow. They weren't lost. They were done for books.
They are beautiful, though.
And
they're stunning.
They were. Yeah, I tell you the funny part about doing those, because I did those months after the fact. From the time I did the card set, I had to try and match my style, that really like quick choppy style I used on the cards. I had to redo that on those cards. So I basically go through the same kind of schedule on those things, just so I can try and maintain that look. So
they do maintain the look. That's so surprising to hear. They're like Deathbird and Jubilee, like they have that same tone.
It would have, and I made sure I did them in the same media. You know what I mean? That I did those in, just because if I had now that I have more time for each painting, if they look too polished or too finished, they're not going to like the rest of the card set. Yeah. So I made a concerted effort to make them, to do them at the same pace that I did the first cards, so that they would match.
See, but that's the longevity of the set because of thoughts like that. You know what I mean? That's the consideration that makes that set kind of live on as long as it has. It's spectacular. Wow, that's so amazing to hear.
So they didn't use in the tin set. They used then in the 93 set that to make them actual cards. And that's a piece that's in the 93 set was not a trading card. It's a big painting that was done as lithograph for a place called First Team Press, I believe. And something happened. They lost the license, the Marvel license, so that never got printed. So we decided to use that in the 93 card set just to get.
Yeah, I think the card from the 93. I mean, I love Ian and I talk about this all the time. The 93 set, we absolutely adore. Sinkovich. There's so many good people in there. You are in there. That Deadpool is iconic. I think that's probably one of the most iconic Deadpool cards of all time is from that 93 set. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
And Steranko's in it. And
Steranko.
Julie Bell. I think it was her first.
Bell.
Probably.
Bell. So, she was telling Julie was telling us that she was really good at metallics. So that's why they had her draw Surfer for 93. It's one of my favorites. Such a good card.
that Surfer Iron Man, all the stuff that had the metallic finishes to it. I know.
Yeah, this is pretty funny.
It's
amazing.
Did I forgive me if I've misread this? Did I read somewhere that you're not a fan of drawing Iron Man?
Yeah, you might have read that once or twice somewhere. Yeah. I like organic stuff, which is why you don't see a lot of sci-fi art from me, because I think painting tech and machinery, it's not so much creative as it is a technical endeavor, and it becomes less enjoyable for me. There are guys who love that stuff. I don't particularly like it, and what I found with Iron Man is that each guy who's taken over that book has successively made the armor more complicated, more difficult to draw. So it's at the point now where unless you have a maquette or a model in front of you, I was talking to Frank Cho about this. He hates Iron Man also because to get armor to look right from every angle, unless you design that armor, or you have a technical facility for doing it, is a real pain. Yeah. So Iron Man, just because of the difficulty in trying to realize that armor, as it's gotten more difficult in various positions, I just don't enjoy doing them. I like Silver Age Iron Man. I'll do the George Tuska, Gene Colan Iron Man all day.
Oh yeah, baby.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. That's great.
The whole Iron Man, I'm not crazy about.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's interesting because you look at your Tarzan, and your characters do have like a breathing type of thing to them. You know what I mean? They feel alive. It's makes total sense to see that kind of comparison.
A lot more fun for me. I can do have to. It's nice to know I can still do that when need be. I did a Wolverine cover a couple of years ago where he's running down like a corridor, and it's all
yes.
All right. And that was a lot of fun to do, just because I don't do that kind of thing that often. But my preference has always been more reality-based organic stuff as opposed to like mechanical things.
Yeah,
very cool.
That makes sense. That Wolverine cover, that was a Midtown Comics variant.
That was a great one. That was I remember seeing that. I remember you showing that reveal, and I was like, "Damn!" Like he's just charting so good.
Tough one to beat as far as a Wolverine painting. It's sort of my consummate Wolverine painting.
I love the progress work, and it's one thing I love just generally, not just about that piece, is what you will share in terms of your progress as you do them. I think with Wolverine, if I remember correctly, did you change your mind about the execution of it partway through?
Yeah, I had the lighting overhead exploding and shards of glass everywhere, and a lot of beams of light coming out of it. And I just realized that was a little bit too much. It was taking the focus away from what the focus should be, which was Wolverine. So I kind of painted that out, and cleaned it up a little bit and gave it a little bit more of a precise nature than that explosive thing that was going on. There's so much going on in that painting that was too much. So you have to know when to dial it back.
Yeah.
How to focus the viewer's attention.
As with many good Wolverine depictions, there's a lot of motion, a lot of kinetic energy in there because that's the character, I guess, to a degree. I did actually get someone to track that down for me, and then I gifted it to a Wolverine collector earlier this year because it would be a much better place in his collection than in mine. I've decided to focus with the number of front covers that you've done. It became unwieldy to collect them all with the volume of comic books I have here. So I've just stuck to your corner boxes.
Oh my God, the corner boxes.
That's a personal pet project that I enjoy the hell out of.
Killed it.
That's all about me, pleasing myself at this point.
Yeah, I love them. I love them. I've got I think I'm missing 2. I've even got the one that was exclusive to the Boston Con. Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man, and it's I think you were there signing. For that one. Yeah. So I've got a signed copy of that that I snagged off eBay. But
I'm looking forward to doing a bunch more of them. My original intent with those, I planned on doing those for years, but can never find the time because paying work. And a friend of mine and a collector had said, well, listen, how about I commission a few off you? So I know you want to do them. So he commissioned, I did the Spider-Man, I think the Hulk, the Captain America, the Submariner, and I can't remember what the other one was. He commissioned 5 of them. I think it might have been the Vision. And I did those, and I really liked the way they came out, and response to them was kind of cool, So I did a few more. I did a few more for myself, and then I had a banner, my cover photo on my page. were the ones I had done up to that point. And I was like, I'm either going to get in trouble for doing these, or and Joe Quesada had seen them and he said, these are really cool. I love how these came out. And then about, I don't know, a month or so later, I got an email from Marvel going, hey, Joe, do you have time? We'd like to talk to you about something. I went, shit. I said, I'm going to get in trouble for the, because I was making prints out of them and stuff. And I called them up and they were like, we really love these. And, we want to know if you want to do a whole cover series. We want to do a whole variant cover series based on. And I thought it was great that they contacted me to do them, because a lot of times they'll just see hey, this is a cool idea. And then they'll just farm them out to other people, but they wanted me to do them. And that's how my original approach is to do all the 60s boxes first and move on to the 70s and stuff and contemporary. But I had to do some more contemporary characters for those covers that I did. So there's a Spider-Gwen and there's the Marvel. But you try to retrofit them, to look like old corner boxes. And since the corner boxes, except for the Submariner, as far as the Jumpy Sema did, they were all pickup art. If you look at the old corner boxes, you find the original image in the comics. You just have to know where to look for them. So what I did when I had to do the contemporary ones, I tried to find clip art basically from different art who were affiliated with that character to use as the corner boxes. And so I tried to keep up there. That's why they all say after somebody else.
Yes.
To keep up the idea that the corner box is a clip art from inside the books.
That's so cool. I was so close to getting the Surfer one, and I was like, okay, I cannot eat for 6 months. Maybe I can do it. Like, I don't know, it's a good weight loss plan. It might work out in my favor. But no, that's so funny you said that about the retro ones, because I was wondering, I was like, man, how's he going to pull that off? Because they don't, they don't really do that now. And it looked like it, you know what I mean? It looked like it was imagined back then. And I never realized that they were retrofitted. And the Surfer always looked familiar because I know that pose very well. Right. But it never completely connected for me. And I love the size you did them on too, and the dimensions. Like that's great. It was just such a great.
Yeah. When I was making prints out of them, like that's such an odd size. I don't know if people are going to like these or not, because they're not really posters. They're I think the prints are 25 by 7.5 or something. I'm like, who's going to want? Are these going to prints? And man, people absolutely love them. They absolutely love them. And then Marvel. The wood plaque things that they're selling in like Hobby Lobby and other places. So yeah, I guess it was just, it's something I hit upon, because I when I did the commissions for the guy, they weren't supposed to be mocked up as corner boxes. And I suddenly said to myself, well, how do I do this? Let me see what these look like actually mocked up as the actual boxes. So that became a whole endeavor in itself, because I had to make sure that the colors that I chose for the backgrounds, I don't know if you ever noticed on the corner boxes, they matched the logo. They matched the Marvel logo for that month. So I had to find then the books that had that logo that matched up with the background color I picked to make sure. And then the month and the years had to match. So what I did was I did a lot of copying and scanning and cutting in. Like I Asgard Press did these great Marvel Comics calendars. The cover cat for about 10 years until they didn't get the license renewed. So I would scan those, or I'd scan the original comics that I had, and I would take like the October from one and the one from another one, and I cobbled those boxes together in Photoshop to get them to match the actual month and the number, and so they're a bit of a pain to put together, but the end result is, and I've done enough of them at this point where, aside from maybe changing the number and the date on them, I can just put the image into a cover now, because I have so many different color logos already mocked up from all the different boxes I've done. So it's a lot less time consuming now than it was initially when I was actually building those boxes for every print.
Wow. I mean, I know you're busy with so much, but a book on that one day, man, that'd be crazy, because there's so much research on that. It's so brilliant. The existence of that in the future.
Well, listen, if they ever make it into trading card form, I'm so there.
Oh my God.
I'm so there.
Yeah. How do you do that? I talked to somebody also about how do you do this with trading cards? You know, that would be kind of tough with the you can I mean, they did those oblong. If you remember the double-sized cards, they did like I think
the widescreen ones. Yeah,
there was the man one, and I think Lady Death did those.
Yes, the widescreen.
Yeah. So I mean, they would be uniquely sized cards if you ever did those as cards. If you wanted to do the corner box, but then the image would be really small. You know, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, listen, I love them. We've massively segued there, but that's brilliant because I just love those corner boxes. So I had to bring them up. I had it on my list of things I wanted to say that I think are really cool. So can we time jump now? Because I don't want you to. It's not like a job interview where you have to give your resume for the last 30 years or anything like that. Let's time jump to Marvel Masterpieces 2007, which is Upper Deck's first Marvel set, I believe. And they did 3 of them, one in 2007, 2 in 2008. And that was the 15th anniversary. So we've just gone 15 years into the future.
Right.
Did you, because you did the box art for that one. So how did that come about? What do you remember about that?
Marker is a friend of mine, and he was one of the art directors and editors up at Upper Deck at the time. And he emailed me and asked me if and said that they were going to be doing a new Marvel Masterpiece set. I think it was mostly preprint art, right?
Yes, it was from their Versus system set.
Right. But they asked me if I'd be interested in doing the box art for it. So yeah, sure. And then nothing really substantial about how that came about. It's just they called me up and asked me if I had time to do the box art, and I said,
Well,
that's really cool.
They told me the characters they wanted on the cover.
Gotcha.
The painting, and I just took it from there.
Gotcha. Well, the interesting thing about that is that they cut, I think the Hulk, they cut a section of the end of the image because it's a long image. And it was one of the cards in the set.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it did actually so you did actually have your first new Marvel Masterpieces card, even though it didn't end up being created as a Masterpieces.
I don't know that. All right. Yeah. Okay. That's cool.
And then there's that oversized promo, that kind of 5x7.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah. That too. I know the promo card.
Yeah, because I've got your John Hancock on one of them in my collection. Yeah, there. So yeah,
for space in the middle of it. I think the sign.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. I still need an unsigned one for my master set of 2007. 2007 is the set that got me properly into MasterCard. So it's my kind of patient zero, if you like. So yeah, we've waxed lyrical about that one for a long time. Tell me about then, probably judging by the timeline as we understand it and from what was in your book, tell us about getting the call 20 years after 92, give or take, from Upper Deck about a potential other set.
Okay, well, I had always, ever since I did that first set, it bothered me how quickly they were done. And I kind of always felt that it wasn't the best work I could do, obviously, because I had to blow through them. But I just to segue for a second, I've been going back through that set recently, and it's nowhere near as rough and unfinished as I remember it being. I'm kind of amazed at the amount of work I was able to get into those cards. So they're not that. I mean, they're great trading cards. They still weren't the best work I could have done. You know what I mean? Like I said, they were colored pencil. They were everything. So I had always wanted to go back and revisit that and have enough time to do what I do on that card set. Because I was always kind of envious that after the first couple sets, people were getting a year and a half to work on a card set. The Hilleberg had a year and a half or something like that, or 2 years, and Boris and Julie had a year and a half or 2 years. And I was like, Jesus, I had 3 months. They've had, 2 years. So obviously the paintings are going to be that much better and that much more finished. So I'd always wanted the opportunity to go back and revisit and kind of show what I could do with the card set. And I had approached them a couple of times that they weren't ready yet at that point to do a whole new card set. And then a few years after after I had thought about it, because I wanted to do the 20th anniversary, and that did work out. And then they finally, around the 25th anniversary, they gave me a call, like right before the 25th anniversary, to do the card set. And I was really happy with the opportunity to finally have enough time to revisit it, and I think put my all into the set. We missed the 20th anniversary. Which, like I said, I approached them for the 20th anniversary, and it just didn't come about. But then I think for the 25th, they decided that it might be a good idea to do a set.
So you got, okay, this is just the craziest thing. So now we got 2016 Marvel Masterpieces, which is just still like the most drool-worthy set of all time. It's just amazing. The excitement's always buzzing in the air. People are just can't wait for the set. They're so excited. So you've approached the 92. They're smaller pieces.
Right.
You're going into 2016. What's the pregame? Where are you at in your head? Like, what's your battle plan for this set?
Well, I knew I was going to have more time to work on it, so I could do larger paintings and spend more time on them. My technique at that point, as I was asked earlier, I had now shifted and refined itself to it's all acrylics at this point. I've learned how to do them. I'm very proficient with them. So I felt that the paintings were going to be that much better and that much more finished, and look more like actual paintings than painted comic book drawings, like a lot of the 92 set looked. So I decided that I had to pick a size that would give me enough room to work, but still be small enough to be expeditious. So I settled on I think it was 10 by 14, which was the right size, because I could, and also because I could take an illustration, 20 by 30 illustration board, cut it in half, and I can get four paintings out of it. You know.
Wow.
You know, so it was a matter of having enough time, having enough space to actually work, and also being economical with the boards, because the boards are not the cheapest things in the world to come by.
Yeah, of course. No, so you're going full acrylics on this. Now this is now I'm going to be honest with you, Joe. I'm a dorky person, okay, and I'm geeking out over here. So I'm embarrassing myself, and that's okay. Was there any? Because I always look at 92 and I look at 16 and I think, is there like a continuation of the stories from the 92 pictures to like the 2016 pictures? Because there are some interesting, really amazing connections between like, you know, how they like, you know, between your decisions for doing the characters again in a different way, a different approach. I just wondered, like, is there anything that you remember for any particular character or anything you want to talk to in terms of choosing those poses for the 2016 set?
No, not really. I mean, the first set was the first set. I did a lot of like sort of homages to their first issues, like the Dr. Octopus in the first set had the atomic plant behind them, and the lizard had the swamp behind them. So I tried to reach as far back into like each character's history as possible. For that first set. The second set was just about coming up with images that I thought exemplified the character and poses that worked for him. So there was no conscious connection to the 92 set. It was simply coming up with poses that I thought worked. And I mean, the black cat on the building thing, it's a theme that carried over from the first set, but it's a lot more involved this time around.
Yeah.
It's like I said, I tech and scenery and buildings and stuff are always a pain, but it's nice to know I can still do it when I have to, you know.
Yeah, they look. Yeah, understatement. You definitely could do it. Yeah, it's spectacular.
There are certain places where that there's no other option. You know what I mean? And you have to do it and pull it off if you have to do it. You know,
it's like Iron Man thing, fan foom. It's like you've done
that.
Iron
Is a
Man,
crazy piece,
but he's fairly small.
That is just a crazy piece.
That sums up my position on Iron Man right there.
Yeah, fair enough. No further questions. Defense rest.
It's a crazy piece, though. It's so good.
It's interesting you mentioned the. I love that Hulk. It's interesting you mentioned the Black Cat, because you did a one of the Marvel poster series in the mid '80s of Black Cat.
Yeah.
And she was. I think there was slightly more going on in the piece, if I remember correctly. But I still remember there being a rooftop involved.
There was a roof. There was a top, and he was holding a jewelry case, and there was a jeweler's window downstairs. The interesting thing about the Black Cat piece in the 2016 set was I had done a cover for a thing called Night Cat back around 1990 or 91 that Marvel. It was a cross promotion thing with some girl who was like a club singer, and they did a comic book based on her. So that pose on the Black Cat piece was actually one of my initial poses for the Night Cat painting. And I had the sketch in my files for the longest time. And I was like, and when I was putting the set together, I was going through old sketches and see if to spark any ideas and stuff. And that initial pose was, I have a real loose like marker like sketch out of that pose. And I decided here's my chance to use it. It's perfect for the Black Cat. So I reused it then on this Black Cat painting.
Brilliant. That's so fantastic. So there's something else that I wanted to ask about 16. I know at one point, and Upper Deck has certain characters are banned at some point around the time you kind of start this in 2013, I think, and there's some characters like Surfer. I'm just so lucky that it made it to the set because I absolutely adore it. It's one of my favorites, and it was so interesting to see the cars that came later. Like you did a Galactus.
Odd, but when I started to get their no-fly list of characters,
right?
The Fantastic Four were originally in the queue. And I had the Human Torch drawn up, and I had painted the Reed Richards one at that point already. And then I got the word that Marvel now has taken the FF off the table across the board. Because they were having a dispute with was it Paramount?
Fox, I think.
Fox.
Yeah.
They just discontinued the FF. So even though the FF, the Mr. Fantastic card was done, they pulled now all of the FF. And oddly, they left the Surfer, right? They pulled almost anything connected to the FF and any characters, but they left the Surfer. They took out Galactus, but left Doctor Doom. So I found the choices weird because you would think that Doctor Doom would be the main FF villain, but they left him in there. They left the Surfer, but took out Galactus. So it was weird the characters that they chose to eliminate. I found that a bit incongruous with who I thought together. If you're gonna have the Surfer, you kind of got to have Galactus. But I always, and the Galactus one was already penciled up also. So we had to switch them out with other characters, and I can't remember who else got switched out. Who they got switched out for. But I always knew that if we did a book that I would want to do some extra cards, and I would probably add the FF into the book if I possibly could. And luckily we were able to finish that big four. Because how do you have a Marvel Masterpiece set without the Fantastic Four?
Thank you.
I understood what their issue was, but it just seemed weird to have a Marvel Masterpieces without the FF.
Speaking my language, makes sense. No, they're beautiful in the book. All kidding aside, they're gorgeous.
There we go.
With Upper Deck, they said, well, we might do, if the FF is approved again, maybe we could do sort of like an amended mini set and make them into cards for the 2016 set. But of course that it was just an idea that was bandied about, at some point.
Yeah, they are. I'm glad that they've made it into your book. They are stunning pieces. They really are. What I love also in the book is the inclusion of the sketch cards that you did for the set, which I know you did some for Marvel Premiere in 2017 as well. Are they? How do you find working on sketch cards?
I load them. I really. It's really. I'm a painter, and time it takes to do them. That's why. They wanted fully painted sketch cards. I was like, I'm painting 135 paintings. I'm not doing fully painted sketch cards also. So I came up with a sort of a nice medium where they're colored drawings, which I think worked out pretty well.
They look great. Yeah.
I'm glad people like them. It's it's if I do like sketch card commissions now, I'll do a fully painted sketch card, okay. But. I'm not a fan. I find the size really prohibitive and restrictive. And my eyes are 63 years old now. It's not the easiest thing to work on,
Yeah, I imagine. Well,
I still got mine over here that you did for that gentleman, where you did for giving you the full set or whatever. So I still have my Surfer over here, which I adore. But I remember you mentioning that about the sketch cards, but they came out great. They always look good, man.
Yeah, I was happy because I again, it took a second to figure out how to approach them, and still make them look kind of really cool and in color, and I think they worked out really well.
Yeah, I mean, you also did some for 2012, but they were much bigger.
Those weird lenticular things, yeah.
Yeah, man, those look beautiful.
Mary Jane and Anna, I think, in those. But again, I tried to paint them in watercolors on that cardstock, and they came out kind of grainy, and they're not. I wish I had taken the approach I took with these on those.
Yeah,
instead of paint, just trying to paint them in sort of a watercolor technique, because the cards didn't really take watercolor too well.
And they change the materials on these sketch cards quite often too, from time to time. Yeah, it changes from set to set.
It's the reason I hate sketch covers also, because half of them are like drawing on wax paper, and it's impossible. Also to draw on them because the pencil doesn't hold, and if you try to ink them, and then it never dries completely because you smudge them. So I try to avoid sketch covers as much as possible also.
That makes sense.
I was about to ask for a friend if you ever did commissions on them, so I'll pass that back to her.
Yeah, I avoid them as much as I possibly can.
Okay, cool. Noted. I've got 5 copies of Black Cat #1 blank that I'm just waiting for the right opportunity. Can I just say, we talked earlier on about that motion, that what was the expression you used? Height of tension.
Yeah.
This piece from 2016.
I love that piece.
Mary Jane is one of my daughter's 7. She's just turned 7, and she's I've got them. I'm on pause with it at the moment because we had to move, but I did the daily masterpieces, right. And it got to the point where, because I'd be looking after her on Saturday, she'd have to come upstairs for me because my wife was working, and she'd have to help me choose the card that was going to be on the daily masterpieces for that day, because I'm not that organized that I do them ahead of time. And she'd invariably gravitate to Masterpieces 2016 and the female characters, and she loves them. She absolutely loves them, and that, along with the Gwen Stacy and the Kitty Pryde and Lockheed, because it's a cute little dragon on the shoulder.
Lockheed's great.
She loves them, and I was trying to figure out what it was that was most appealing, apart from the fact that she's identifying more with female characters in Marvel, as you would perhaps expect. And I think it's just the color palette on them, the vibrancy on the cards, because it's really, they're really bright, vibrant cards, and you can tell, you can see from here that's carried through from the original.
And that piece in particular, but there's just so much storytelling.
Dancing to music.
Well, I was trying to go back into the history of her. If you notice the dress is dressed from the cover of Spider-Man 59 when she was dancing. Which was really her personality. When you first met her in what was it, 42? In 43, she's got the stereo on and she's dancing. That was the character. So the pop art Peter Parker in the background kind of fit the whole 60s vibe that I was trying to go for. The retro 60s vibe thing I wanted to do with her, which I thought captured her personality perfectly.
Yeah.
So good.
The Gwen I had originally envisioned, if you look at the picture, and I based her on Carol Lindley, who I always, after seeing the Poseidon Adventure, she was dressed in the go-go boots and the skirt. I was like, she's Gwen Stacy. It's ridiculous that's Gwen Stacy in the Poseidon Adventure. So I always thought that she would make a great Gwen Stacy. So I used a portrait of her as the jumping off point, but I wanted to paint it as if it was a photograph given to Peter. So I wanted to paint the frame around it, and I had my wife write out to Peter, love Gwen. So it'd have a female's handwriting on it, because my handwriting looks like chicken scratch. And I wanted the card to have that on there. And I don't think the card has the writing, and they didn't want to do the frame because they felt the frame kind of was too divergent from what the rest of the set was going to look like, But originally I wanted the Gwen Stacy piece to be a framed picture of her that she gave to Peter. That was my
but that's why you need those pencil drawings, because for a fan of that card, you know what I mean? That just completes the storytelling in that card. It's just so good. So good. And I love the Spidey signals on the back and how it matches with
just
the other one.
It's like how can I keep that? I know, because I wanted to keep them both sort of like in that 60s pop art thing. But what do you do with Gwen? If I'm doing a portrait shot of her? So I just came up with the circular Spidey signal motif, and it worked. I thought it worked out really well.
Oh, it worked out great. I love it.
It's really good.
Background on the Gwen piece kind of is very pure, which is basically what that character was. I wanted it to be, I don't know, I as opposed to the Mary Jane, which is really vibrant and has a lot of movement to it. The Gwen piece, I wanted to be somewhat more pure and virginal, and that one came out.
So good.
It's so good.
Such a good one.
This is actually my second copy of this book, so I'm going to be gifting it to my daughter, but she doesn't know it yet. But I don't. She's barely going to be able to lift it because, my goodness me, if someone broke into your house in the middle of the night, you could just clock them with this and game over. An
interesting aside, also, not to interrupt you, on ideas I had for the different cards. The Frankenstein card, I think as my original version of it, my original intention was I wanted it like an old film strip. Because I painted it almost as a black and white movie, like a monochromatic piece. Yeah, so I photoshopped it into the old film strip, so it would look like an old movie. And that was another one that they felt was too divergent for what the rest of the set looked like, so it was printed just as a regular card. Right. But that version into the book because I thought I still love the idea.
Your Werewolf by Night, the Frankenstein. I love all your monsters, man. They're so good in the set.
Well, I specifically asked for them. It's like instead of doing all the same characters over again, I wanted to have some input to paint characters I never had a chance to paint before. Yeah. So I asked for monsters. I didn't get Dracula because I don't know why we didn't do Tomb of Dracula. But I asked for the Kirby monsters. I asked for a bunch of stuff, and I got, I think, I'd say 75% of the characters that I wanted to paint, they agreed with and stuck in the set.
Wow, that's fantastic. That is fantastic.
I love it. I love it. I need to spend a little bit more time with this book. It's of course you've got the Captain America that didn't make it in, but that's a stunning piece.
Very first painting I did because they needed promo cards for San Diego that year, so they needed like a hero villain thing. So I wanted to do Captain America and the Red Skull, and the the Captain America piece, which I thought was perfect. One of the guys who was in charge of licensing didn't like it. He felt it was too aggressive in a certain way, and the way with the flag bleeding and everything. And I was like, yes. And as much as I tried to explain, because I was in the city when all that was happening, I said, I was a cop. I'm a city cop. It's like I grew up in Manhattan. A lot of my friends died down there. I knew fire, and he just wouldn't. I said, I get it. Then he just would not approve the card. Yeah. So they I don't think any promo cards for San Diego that year because they didn't like this one. There was no time to repaint it.
That's right. Because they did do in 2014 the oversized prints of Lady Sif and Deadpool.
Right.
Which I know you were there and you signed some of them because I did own them until recently. But no, those are absolutely gorgeous. There's not actually that many promo. We've talked about this on episodes before. Obviously, back in '92, the way they market a set and the way they promote a set is very different. So you had, I think, 6 different promos for various magazines. You had, Marvel Aids. There was one in Wizard.
Comic Book Price Guide.
Price Guide with Silver Surfer.
And we had that poster, man. Do you know? I think Ian, if this is right, I think Marvel Masterpieces 1992 is the only one that has like a full out poster for a card set
of Spider-Man.
I think that's it. It's like Spider-Man and then the promo cards lining on the side. I think that's the only one. I know you have a signed version of those too.
They were also releasing those to the mass market back then, so you needed the posters for the comic stores and stuff. I mean, I had been out of it for so long, I didn't understand how the marketing of the cards had changed for when I did this set, because I had done these really because I signed more of those 92 cards than anything else I've ever signed. I mean, to this day, I get tons of those cards at conventions because everybody and their mother had that card set. And I constantly hear how, how that card set meant so much to them because it was such a formative time in their life. And it still blows me away, but I sign more of those than anything else. So when I did this card set, it was kind of like, I wanted it to be a thank you to all the people who supported me all these years because of the first set. But almost nobody knows that set exists except the collector's market, because it now goes directly to the collector's market. It wasn't advertised anywhere. There was no promotion for it. I handed in that last card set, that last card, and within months, it was the distributors had it. It went right into production, and I don't think there was any press about it. Anywhere. It was just dropped on you guys. So there are so many people who have no idea I even did another set, because it's not mass market anymore.
Yeah, it's a shame, because when the set came out, most of us were buying it. I was still building my surfer collection, so I hadn't gone full ham on it like a lot of other people had started doing. And I think it started trickling out that people who were comic book collectors, original art collectors, people and collectors of your work across every medium, all the different sets and characters that you do, were like, whoa, he did another one. And all of a sudden, it was a huge influx of people coming into Marvel cards for the first time. And it was the first time in Marvel cards did they kind of number everything and did a tier system, because before that, like you were mentioning, it was pretty mass produced,
premium set.
It was really our first. We always had Premiere and some other sets that were numbered, but it was the first time where we had something that was like going to be uniformed and completely changed masterpieces forever.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Just like your 92 set, it set it off to a different path.
Blame me again. Go ahead.
In all the good ways.
I still don't understand the tier system and why cards are worth. I don't. It makes my brain bleed when I try to figure it out. People tried to explain it to me, and I just don't get it. I get that that's what you guys do at this point, but yeah, I don't understand it at all. It's changed so much from the days of like mass market trading cards.
It really has.
It's a shame too, because like Ian and I talk about this all the time, but like I read comic books, like, gosh, dude, I found out about the Surfer when I was 7, and I've been reading comic books ever since then and stuff like that, but in the 90s, because I was born in 85, so in the 90s, like when the cards came out, that was my introduction to these characters. You know what I mean? It wasn't the books, unfortunately. I wasn't around at that time. It was these cards, and because like so many of these cards talked about the bios and all this other stuff, it was lovely that it was mass produced. We talk about this all the time. Like, we worry about where Marvel cards are going to go, because you know what I mean? Yeah. Where's that love and that connection?
And and like I said, and so many people said, well, that's the first time I ever saw the characters like fully painted. So obviously you were getting a lot of people buying those cards who never read comics, who never saw the painted work. And, so accessible at point to purchase, you know what I mean? And for impulse buys, and you buy one set, then you buy another set. And really, I mean, I had so many kids, like little kids at these signings, getting stuff signed. It's like, and that you don't see that anymore, because I mean, they're not accessible. And it makes me wonder if there was a mass market accessible set done again, whether or not it would generate that kind of interest,
I think it would. I think they would just have to market it and stick to their guns on that, and actually, to decide to go the full route about it. I mean, we in the group, we try to be so welcoming, and Ian's done such a wonderful job, with the group, and especially it being worldwide. I don't think people realize how global this event was. You know what I mean? I mean, they really don't. I don't think people realize how many serious collectors and casual collectors and collectors from the past are just all around the world. And
I signed these cards in Europe. I signed them in Mexico. I signed them everywhere. It's really, I mean, they literally are everywhere, and you can't get away from them. But like I said, I mentioned the fact that I didn't know this. Oh, I didn't know that. I'll have to go look for it. I'm like, good luck with that. It's like, you're not going to find it, or you're not going to find it in any, and you're going to be able to want to buy it, and I do. I was a little disappointed because I didn't understand the market, how the market had changed, because it didn't do what I wanted the set to do as far as fan interaction. But hopefully somewhere down the line, someone will produce a mass market set that will do that again.
I'm sure it will, and I'm sure this set might even get reprinted to a mass market. I think it'd be a great opportunity. I think it'd be lovely to have everyone in there. I think the book did a lot of that. We try to do.
As guys who have invested so much money into this set when it came out for that high end collector set, would you guys be upset if it went mass market? If they did a mass market? Like, you know,
I personally, no. I know some people might.
Some people would,
but quite frankly, that's their problem. It's I know from the reaction of my daughter, who is only just getting into comics, and they're kind of, you know, My Little Pony at this point. But she's really into Spidey Friends on Disney Plus, which is made for children her age. So it's very soft, very cartoony. You know, Spider-Gwen is in it, Miles Morales is in it, Peter Parker's in it, but they're all like young kid almost. It's kind of weird. Anyway, but she digs it, and she can watch it, and it's safe, and there's nothing in there. I tried her with an MCU movie for the first time last week, and she made it 15 minutes in before she was really scared of something. So she's not made that jump yet to photoreal, but she finds the artwork and the depictions in the 2016 set to be very accessible, even though the characters themselves might be scary characters or sinister characters. I mean, you know, you got Green Goblin there, you got Taskmaster. Right. It's got that fine line where it's okay. So I'm kind of thinking, well, you know, if this ever did get produced as a mass market thing, it would be. I think kids would lap it up. I mean, that's what you need. But the thing at the moment is that the distribution model that Upper Deck kind of have is completely not geared to that at all. You know, it's geared towards, it's very much sold to collectors, distributors, goes to them, and then they can price it pretty much however they want. And it's a very narrow thing. Very few stores can get it without being an approved certain level of dealer. It's only this last few weeks that the first retail blasters of their new Spider-Man metal product has been in Target, Walmart, and Barnes & Noble. That's the first retail existence of any Marvel set, apart from maybe a little bit of Marvel Annual and some Walmart exclusive MCU stuff, for a long time.
Like maybe 2012 long, like a kind of crazy amount of time. I think between the set is beautiful regardless across all ages, but between the storytelling and the color profile, I can see, like, man, if I was 7 and I saw that server from 16, I would have lost my, you know what I mean? I would have lost my mind.
I mean, I understand that there are a lot of there are a lot of other distractions now. I mean, there was no internet in '92, you know, and video games were in their infancy and stuff like that. So they're not an interactive endeavor for kids, but so it makes me wonder whether or not they'd still be into it. But I think if you have the right product, the right art, you know, and they're accessible, I think kids will buy them.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think so. Absolutely.
I don't see why not. Yeah.
I was going to ask you. I've got one more question, and then I've got. You remember we talked about this book that's coming up. In fact, let's talk about the book straight next, because we've been alluding to it all the way through, and people might not know what the F we're talking about. So, what's happening with Marvel Masterpieces 92 and a book?
Okay. We realized Mike Friedlander at FPG and I have been best friends for 25 years. I did the Tarzan trading cards for him back in the 90s. And we realized that the anniversary was coming up, and it really was. It's my career defining job. I mean, it's the weirdest thing. It's as I've done so much different stuff over the years, but it always goes back to that 92 set. This is stuff that people remember. And it really did, you know, even though I had been working in the industry for 14 years by the time I did that card set, it really did sort of change my career. You know, the focus that those things got and the popularity of them, it really did change the trajectory of my career. So I always felt that it being that important a set, the 30th anniversary is coming up, we should find some way to acknowledge it. So we were trying to figure out how to do a book. And we actually proposed it to Marvel a couple of years ago because we knew we wanted to do it. But we wanted to make it something special. You know, we didn't want to just do like a reprint book like the books were done, you know, when the comics came out. We wanted to do a high-end book, but basically a whole historical tome on the book, on the cards. So we're putting together the paintings, which unfortunately scans don't exist of a lot of them. You know, this was pre-internet, so I wasn't scanning stuff, and while I normally shot transparencies of my work back then, these were done on such a tight schedule, I would just drop them off. And we always assumed that Marvel had the film or the scans, of the cards. And apparently over the years with the moves and the bankruptcies and stuff like that, stuff got lost. And they found some in a file cabinet at some point, but a lot of them are gone. We don't know if Skybox or Inkworks had them, if Upper Deck had them at this point. But they have supposedly the scans from the comics when they reprinted the comics, but they're cropped. Yeah. And what we do is we really wanted to post-paint for the first time. We wanted to print the full uncropped images, because even on the cards they're cropped for bleed and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But we're having the hardest time finding a lot of the originals. We have collectors who are really accommodating, and letting us scan or photograph the artwork and stuff like that. Which is why the book's probably going to come out later than the 30th anniversary. We wanted it for October of this year. No, it won't be October of this year. It'll be early next year sometime. We'll probably announce it in October to hit the anniversary.
Right.
But it's taking a lot longer to compile everything than we had expected. But we also want to get all of the ancillary promotional stuff, the appearances that I did. We're having the retailers who own the stores where I did the appearances contribute some stuff to it. Oh, wow. I think asked people on the page to contribute their memories for the book. So it's taking a little bit longer to put together. I also found, which I can't believe I found, because I had an envelope, because I was, while I wasn't shooting the paintings, I would go to my local copy shop and I would make color Xeroxes of them if I had a chance. So I had an envelope with a ton of color Xeroxes, full-size color Xeroxes of a lot of the paintings. They're obviously not perfect, but they're color copies. And I also found in an envelope, which I didn't realize I had. Remember I told you that I broken down the cards for myself in these really loose sketches.
Yeah.
I actually found those sketches. So I had those in an envelope in the back of a flat file somewhere that I had no idea I still had. So we're going to produce those in the book also. We're going to those. They're not finished pencils. They're really loose, gestural drawings and stuff like that. But it was the genesis of each of the cards, and you'll see that some of them aren't exactly what eventually came out, because I ended up with ideas and I changed my ideas as time went along. But it's kind of interesting to see. So we have those. We found those, and then we're going to be doing the book as a Kickstarter to get the thing up and running. And we wanted to make it special. I talked to Michael. I said, the guys who collect this stuff are really, really into this stuff, and they've always treated me so well. How do we make this special for them? So what we decided to do was what he had done with an Enric book that came out last year. Enric had done 100 little Vampirella paintings, little tiny, like color comp type things that they put into a little hardcover book, and they kickstarted. You can get one of the paintings with if you supported the Kickstarter at a certain level. So while I can't reproduce obviously every trading card in that card set, what I'm doing is what started out as what was supposed to be loose color comps of the figures from those cards are kind of turning into more fully finished paintings as I'm doing them. So we're redoing the figures on a white background of each of the cards from 92. As in for the Kickstarter, which is a little mind-numbing to be doing, to be honest with you, because it's repainted. You already did like 100 times, but it's interesting to as I'm doing them to see how I did them, and I'm realizing how I got them done so quickly, because I developed techniques with these things that were really expeditious. They're not painted like the Tarzan covers were painted. There's a lot of flat color with highlights picked out of it and stuff like that. So it's getting these new recreations done a little easier. I call them color sketches. I call them color sketches in the group, and certain people were like calling FBG, going, "Oh, if they're color sketches, why are they going to be that much?" They're not really color sketches. They're fairly finished. Because I just couldn't, bang them out and not have them look like something that you guys would appreciate. So
I'm like pre-drooling here. I'm so excited. No, don't you dare show me one.
Joe has left his chair. Here he comes.
And all the ones I have done already into FBG, but these are a few of the new.
So we're seeing Iceman. There's Phoenix.
Oh my God, Phoenix.
So yeah.
Oh my God.
Hello.
So they're a little more than color sketches. You know? But yeah, we wanted to make it special for you guys more than anybody else, you know. So that's what we're doing with the Marvel Masterpiece book. Well, so we're hoping to get as much of the actual originals as possible, and if not, then we're going to have to, you know, either use the crop scans from the comic books and stuff like that. But we're being fairly successful. I think we have 30 left that we need to find. So
okay.
Wow.
Well, that's
fantastic work.
If there's anything more we can do to push out on other social channels.
Yeah, if you need anything from us, please don't be shy.
We'll happily do so.
There was a list of the ones that were missing. So I'll get the updated list from Michael of the ones that we need. The originals that are somehow out there somewhere. So hopefully somebody has them. I'm getting calls from the weirdest people. Dan Jurgens just messaged me a couple of days ago. He has 3 of them. He has 3 of the originals.
Wow.
What, years ago? Yeah, I was like, I had no idea. So we found 3 more of those. So they're coming from really weird places, but we are as the word's getting out, we are finding them. You know, yeah. But
that's amazing.
Yeah, we assumed all these years that Marvel had film, you know, that they archived it. But through the moves and everything else, I guess stuff like that wasn't really kept. I mean, they don't even have film of some of the comics. If you notice some of the Marvel Essentials that they reproduce, they're shooting from the comics because they're filming. So I guess over 60 years, stuff just kind of disappears.
Well, it's organic.
I know people are gonna love this set. I know this set's gonna the book is immediately gonna sell out, and this is going to be extremely successful. I know people have been wanting this for some time, and seeing the work, I mean, and maybe I shouldn't say that loud, but if you didn't give us anything, I still buy the book. I'm very grateful to you for the extra work you're putting in there.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, we're trying to make it like as a complete historical account of that card set as possible. And as earlier, I mean, we had no idea what that card set was going to become, or I would have shot film of all of the paintings. You know, I would have kept, because I have film of almost every cover I've ever done. I used to get transparency shot, but that job, because of the scale and the time frame, it just never even occurred to me to shoot, you know, film of all this painting. Because who knew? Honestly,
who knew? No one knew. Yeah.
It's like you were a 14-year overnight success in 1992. I guess that must have been how it felt.
Yeah. And you think about it, it's like I stopped to think about it and do like the time frame. And I'd been working for 14 years at that point when I did that card set, and it just. I mean, I was getting work and people knew who I was, but that really just elevated my career to the whole, you know.
Something I wanted to ask, and I'm glad we kind of segued to this point, because obviously we've got the MMC group, which is, you know, a whole legacy of now 11 sets, a 12th one coming whenever it's able to be.
By the way,
say that again, sorry.
I've seen the art for the new Masterpiece set. I'm friends with the guy who's doing it.
Great. Okay, this is good.
That's amazing.
Good.
Happy.
Good. Okay, this is good. There's also a Joe Jusko fan club group on Facebook.
Yes.
So it must be quite
which I still find.
But that's what I was going to ask, actually. It's something that came up in conversation yesterday. So yesterday, our listeners would have heard it by now, but yesterday we spoke to Renee Witterstatter.
Yes.
And she's a gorgeous lady. We had a really fun time. And we had a topic of conversation come up there, and I jotted down the following question. And I don't know how. Renee asked us a question to ask you.
Oh yeah, Renee asked us a question. We were dying.
I'll get to that. That's the light-hearted question. This question is not meant to be that heavy, but how do you find balancing that kind of personal life and how much you share of your process and your work with that kind of public persona, and the kind of, we had a good conversation yesterday about the fact that a lot of the creators are almost as looked up to by a lot of their fans as the superheroes are. You've got that same kind of perception there. How's that been for you as someone who I strike as a very down to earth, very humble, hardworking fella?
Yeah, I'm what you see on social media essentially is me. I've never been one to put on an air or try to be something I'm not. So if you follow my page, you see I post artwork and I post like stupid memes or accounts and stories and stuff like that. I enjoy the interaction with people because I work by myself most of the time. So I find the interaction on social media to be psychologically beneficial for me, and I do my best not to become confrontational. People think they know me because we talk on social media, but honestly, it's like, my friends know me. You know what I put out there. I don't do politics. I don't do religion. I just don't. I don't see any point ever doing that. People assume they know my politics because I was a cop. You don't know my politics. Yeah. I don't think that. I don't post really personal stuff. I don't post. My wife and I talk about this all the time. You don't post personal stuff. I'll post shots of me and my grandson and stuff like that. But I really personal, like medical stuff. And I see people posting medical stuff all the time. I don't see any reason to do that. How do you put this? People think that because you're Facebook friends, that you're friends. You're a guy that I barely know. You're like that guy I see on a subway across the street, across the car from me that I strike a conversation with. I don't know, you don't know me, but we chat, and people tend to get personal. They ask you personal questions as if you're obligated to answer them. And it's none of your business. I will be as sociable as I possibly can. I really like talking to people online, but there's a limit to how much you share. There really is.
Yeah.
Well, I think what's always so brilliant about you and pretty much everyone else, not pretty much everyone else we've met, we're a very lucky community of card collectors, because all the artists have been nice. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's so pleasant and so respectful of each other. And that was the big part of the group too. And a big part of this podcast is, this is like an oral history because, this stuff doesn't exist anywhere else.
Right.
And we always appreciate you guys' time and everything you do with us. And we always hope that most people in the group and fans are understanding that, hey, this person's out of their very busy schedule, doing this for us, saying hi, dropping some kind of fact that we're all obsessing about, you know what I mean? And kindly moving on with their day. So we appreciate you, and it's completely understandable and frankly, professional and the way to do it.
Yeah. Like I said, I enjoy coming to that page. It's one of the few pages that I interact on as much as I do. I'll go to certain pages and if people, because I follow art pages and comic pages, and I like. We'll talk about art and stuff like that. But I really appreciate that, and I learn a lot actually because, like I said, it's changed so much. So I learn a lot from that page also, from listening to you guys talk and chat and about what's going on. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's and most people understand that. I don't live on Facebook. It seems like I do sometimes because while I'm working, and I'll take a break and I'll scroll and I'll make a comment here and there. So people think that if they message you, that Facebook Messenger is like an intercom and you're supposed to answer them right away.
Oh, I get that. What I mean? Yeah.
Hey, dude, it's like, okay, I was just on Facebook maybe 5 minutes ago, but I'm not on now. Just my browser's open doesn't mean I'm scrolling Facebook.
Yeah. Right.
Well, we get that as because I've stepped back from adminning the group now because I did it 4 years and it was just full on. Because nice as people are, there are some crazies. But I'm sure you get this, Norrin, where people message you on Messenger and they go, "Hi, Ian," and they're waiting for you to respond like it's live chat.
Yeah.
And I have to say to them, don't leave me hanging. Say what you want to say, and I'll get back to you when I've got a moment. I'm not going to interrupt dinner with my family or something like that to respond to you just because it's like an instant thing for you. I do find it very interesting the way that social media can be positive and the feedback that you get and the interaction that you get, but it can also be create a bizarro world is the expression.
It's a fine line. Yeah. And the expectations sometimes are a bit much from people, but I find that not to be the norm. Thankfully,
Same.
I mean, I do everything I can to avoid conflict on social media. I don't tweet because I think Twitter is one of the most aggressive places on the face of the earth. I do Instagram as an art drop on Instagram. I can share stuff. I can honestly say I accidentally looked at my DMs on Insta. I have never answered a DM on Instagram ever, and I've got a billion of them. I just noticed, so people might think I'm an asshole. I'm ignoring them, but I the whole attraction of Instagram was the fact that you didn't really have to interact in the way you do on Facebook. You know what I mean? I enjoy Facebook because of the interaction. Instagram was basically just supposed to be sort of like a promotional thing for me, But so if you've DM'd me on Instagram and I haven't answered anybody. I've never answered one DM on Instagram ever.
Everyone's on the same playing field on
That's
Instagram.
the thing. Instagram started like that, but because Zuckerberg and Facebook now Meta, whatever it's called, owning it, they want this to be a universal messaging ecosystem between WhatsApp, Messenger, Instagram, whatever else they haven't yet bought. And it's too much. I said this when we spoke to Bill Sienkiewicz, who was gorgeous, about Twitter, because he really does Twitter quite well, and he does get into it as well. I always find it fascinating to watch how different people navigate the different waters and the different temperaments. I'm going to jump to the question that Renee asked us to ask you. Now, we don't know what this means.
We have no idea what she was talking about.
I said to Renee,
we assume it's an inside joke.
If we were going to pass along one thing to Joe or ask him a question, what would it be? And she said, without hesitating, what superpower does he have in connection with the animal kingdom?
I can attract cats no matter where we go, all over the face of the earth.
That's amazing.
I am. It's the weirdest thing. It's like cats are attracted to me. I think I have an affinity for them. We were in Spain, and there was a cat like on the other end of this courtyard. And I would call to it, and the cat would come to me. I mean, the cats somehow seek me out all over the world, and I can't figure out what my superpower is as far as cats go.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's pretty great.
So there's two more things that people sent in. So an artist, Andre Orsch, who does wonderful work, sketch cards,
nicest guy,
and
super
bigger
awesome
pieces. He's in Canada, just outside Toronto. He just said simply to tell Joe, I said, thank you for opening my eyes to what comic art could look like. He is probably the biggest influence on my artistic journey and the reason I got into painting.
Wow. That's see, when I hear stuff like that, it humbles me, because I know that I'm a guy who never had a painting lesson in my life, who I'm self-taught, I kind of cobble together whatever I know just by trial and error. So the fact that people find something of value in what I do, I always find to be surprising and incredibly humbling.
Well, Dre, you heard it here first. He'll be listening to this. He always listens on the day it drops. We usually drop these on a Thursday, and he listens to it on speed and a half. So we sound like chipmunks probably on his drive into his office in Toronto. So, and finally, and this is from a collector. We've had one from one of your peers. We've had one from Dre, who's probably also a peer, I guess, and one from a collector. So I spoke to Pankit, and we know Pankit.
I love Pankit. He's the best.
He lives in Boston. He's a big Captain America collector.
Right, I know.
So yeah, brilliant. You know of him. So he actually asked me three things, but we've kind of answered two of them during the course of this podcast. So I guess this is a great question to kind of wrap up on. Would you be open to doing another set or subset, chase set, if you're given a chance?
Okay. I've been asked recently about my interest in doing another set. It's a little too soon after 2016. I would need a little bit more space where I can come up with something a little bit different. I'm also involved with the Edgar Burroughs project right now, and that has to be my priority for everything. It's a project I've wanted my entire career, and the fact that I finally gotten it seems like I finally it's a dream for me. It's something I never thought I would ever get, and now that I have it, I'm really putting everything I have into that set. I'd be interested in doing another set. It definitely would be sometime down the line, but I'm not closed off to it at all.
Great. Well, that's joyful news for everyone listening, I'm sure. So
that's so great.
People start saving those pennies now, kids. Well, it'd be nice if they could buy it in stores, but possibly not. Hey, Joe, thank you. I've loved talking to you. It's 2 hours have just gone like that. And
it has been 2 hours.
It's been 2 hours. It's been slightly over, in fact, which is great because people will love it. I just want to put personally, I just want to thank you for being in the groups, for interacting with the collectors, for making the items that you've made exclusively available to them. And just giving them and us an insight into your work when you can. It really is a pleasure. Thank you. Joe, you remember at the beginning of the episode, I said, write down two little words. This is where I have to shut up and let Joe Jusko, our guest on what will be episode 150, say...
Well, this is Joe Jusko, and enjoy collecting.
Thanks for listening to the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast. Visuals and tasting notes for each episode can be found on our Facebook page. You can subscribe and leave us a voicemail via our home on anchor.fm/MCCP. We're also on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms. Please take a second to subscribe, like, and review our show wherever you get your podcasts. Our podcast can be found by Googling @the MCC Pod, which will also find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Our Facebook community is at MCCW, Marvel Card Collectors Worldwide, and MMC, Marvel Masterpieces Collectors. The great music we use is called Rocket Power by Kevin MacLeod. Thanks to the collectors, artists, and creators who support the Marvel Cards Fan Collective. We'll see you next time, and remember, it's a small hobby but a fun one. Make mine Marvel and enjoy collecting.